In other news, you guys heard about the gunmen in Arizona watching ballot boxes? That sure is cool and great.
Boxes after a number of incidents, including armed individuals showing up at polling locations in Maricopa County. The county sheriff gave an update on election security earlier this week.
It's absurd to think that any individual can't go to a vote box and drop their ballot, that you can't go to a polling site and not be harassed, that you can't cast your vote and at the conclusion see an election and have confidence that the outcomes are just. So we're going to fight and we're going to work and we're going to do everything necessary to keep people safe and to protect our community and the polling sites so that we can protect our democracy.
Let's bring in CBS News tech and politics reporter.
So basically, at a couple of these ballot boxes, there are literal, like, masked Arizona gunmen who are just, like, chilling there staring at you as you cast your vote. You know, they've been taking photos and videos of people, presumably to intimidate or to sort of infer or imply future violence. So there's a historical analog for this behavior, obviously. I'm sure you guys know what I'm about to call up here, or what images I'm about to throw up. But you boys with the pointy hats, actually huge fans of chilling out by election stations back in the day. See, even though black people were sometimes legally allowed to vote in the Jim Crow South, legally allowed to vote and actually able to vote are two very different things. Between literacy taxes or literacy tests, poll taxes, grandfather clause, letting white people go through even if they were poor and illiterate, and the last bulwark of defense, which was, literally, the Klan oftentimes, or at least people ideologically in line with the Klan, would show up at election stations and just sort of chill there, They don't have to say anything, right? And they did, they'd say the N-word and stuff. But they didn't have to say anything because if you were black and you went to vote at that station, they could see you and they could follow you back home and they could fucking kill you. It's not like it didn't happen that often back then. This is the exact same method. It's voter intimidation being done. Now, here's the thing. These guys right here, they don't know who you're voting for. The vote that you cast is done inside the building in a private booth. So given the fact that these right-wing gentlemen don't actually know who you're voting for, what characteristics do you think they're going to look for in order to infer your vote? Give it a think.
Musaddiq Bidar to talk more about this. Musaddiq, good to see you.
Good to see you, Vlad.
So the Arizona Secretary of State's office has referred 6 cases of voter intimidation to federal authorities as early voting is well underway in Arizona. What are the suspects accused of doing?
Yeah, well, early voting has been underway in Arizona for about 3 weeks. And so far, we have at least 6 cases of voter intimidation taking place at during this early voting period. What we are seeing reports of is voters are dropping off their ballots at ballot collection sites and they are being filmed, they're being followed and intimidated and harassed by vigilante groups who are claiming that they are there to protect the vote.
Fucking LARPers? They're not LARPers, ME8. I know it might be comforting to imagine that they are, but these are just the guys that show up when fascism starts happening. No, there is no LARPing here. It's all actually happening, Like, in retrospect, we can't really call the German brown shirts or the Sturmabteilung LARPers, right? They're, yeah, here we go. Oh, look at these LARPers. Well, I mean, I don't know, man. They kind of ended up winning a little bit, didn't they? For a time, at least. Oh, I don't know if this guy's was a former brown shirt or not. I think he might be, SA. I think he might be a former one. Look at his goofy-ass hair. Master race my ass. Look at this. Looks like a dickhead. He looks just like Lois hair for a guy. You know? Peter! That one. Look at this. Goofy ass motherfucker. All right.
One voter filed a report saying that he and his wife were filmed as they left their car, walked over to the ballot drop box, and they were filmed as they were walking back to their car. These groups took photos of their license plate numbers. It's worth mentioning that it is illegal to film within 75 feet of polling locations in Arizona. On Friday, there was another instance in Mesa, Arizona, where 2 armed individuals wearing tactical gear showed up at a...
Oh, that was Ernst Röhm? He was the gay Nazi leader? Oh my god, he was gay? That explains it all. And killed in the Night of the Long Knives? Okay, I didn't know that was Ernst Röhm.
Polling site. They then left as authorities were on their way. But this is all very concerning for actual election security officials who are raising the alarm that you cannot be intimidating voters or harassing them as they are exercising their right to drop off their ballots early in Arizona.
So it's one thing to hold a press conference about it, but what are authorities actually doing?
Yeah, the sheriff in Phoenix said that he is going to step up security at polling locations and dedicate extra resources to this. Federal authorities are also looking into this. Earlier this week, Attorney General Merrick Garland was asked about these instances of voter intimidation in Arizona, and he vowed that the Department of Justice will make sure that no voter faces this kind of intimidation during this cycle. Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who is also running for governor, she's the Democratic nominee for governor in Arizona, said that she'll continue to forward these reports that her office receives to federal authorities and law enforcement in Arizona. And also the Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans filed a lawsuit earlier this week against one of these vigilante groups, claiming that they should not be there, they should not be intimidating voters, and is asking a court for a restraining order. So we're waiting to see how that lawsuit develops throughout this week. But a lot of eyes on Arizona as voters are trying to drop off their ballots early. And
hey guys, guess how that lawsuit went? A federal judge Friday refused to bar a group from monitoring outdoor ballot boxes in Arizona's largest county where watchers have showed up armed and in ballistic vests, saying to do so could violate the monitor's constitutional rights. U.S. District Court Judge Michael Liberty said the case remained open. The Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans could try again to make its argument against a group calling itself Clean Elections USA. A plaintiff was removed from the case. Liberty concluded that while this case certainly presents serious questions, the court cannot craft an injunction without violating the First Amendment. The judge is a Trump appointee and a member of the Federalist Society. For those of you who don't know, the Federalist Society is essentially just like the intellectual foundation from which the next Holocaust is going to happen. The Federalist Society is like, it's like a Reagan era, hey guys, we're super concerned with what the founding fathers would have wanted. By the way, we're going to, in every conceivable sense, craft like the legal structure for a fully fascist United States, where you have no individual rights, corporations have limitless power, and the only free speech we care about is the free speech to like build the fascist ethno-state that will put you to death. So that's cool. That's great. My man over here, after graduating from law school, served as a law clerk to Vice Chief Justice Ruth McGregor of the Arizona Supreme Court. Practice. He focused on complex commercial and constitutional litigation, as well as campaign finance and election procedure compliance. He's also an adjunct professor of law. Trump nominated him. Great. Member of the Federalist Society since 2005. Cool. Great stuff here. Great stuff. Great stuff. Let's finish this little news snippet, huh?
And facing these kinds of threats and intimidation at the poll.
So describe the genesis of all of this, Musaddiq.
Yeah, well, we've been living in this kind of environment for a long time. And a lot of this is because you have candidates in Arizona for governor, for secretary of state, who have been raising questions about the validity of the 2020 election. Former President Trump lost Arizona by about 10,000 points, 10,000 votes, excuse me. And you have candidates like Kari Lake for governor and Mark Finchem for secretary of state who continue to falsely claim that there were improper votes cast in the 2020 election. Now, Kari Lake still will not say if she will accept the results of the 2022 election. She says she will accept it if she wins. That's a big if. And so you have individuals who are really believing in these conspiracy theories that voters are illegally dropping off ballots when the case is really Americans exercising their rights. In Arizona, as we mentioned, you can vote early, you can take that ballot to drop it off. But a lot of individuals believe that there are improper ballots being cast. And so you have vigilante groups showing up, watching and intimidating voters, making sure that they're not improperly casting ballots when it's not really their job to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, even if there was any evidence at all of election fraud, which there isn't, what the fuck could people do just sitting in a car outside the ballot? Unless you're some kind of soup-brained Neanderthal who legitimately thinks that voter fraud looks like somebody going up to a ballot box with like a bucket full of ballots and just like shoving them in. Like if you're some kind of like 4-year-old who imagines that is how voter fraud is conducted, then, you know, maybe. But I guess that is the intellectual level these people are operating on. We really are in the end times here. I mean, we are at like gunmen like watching you as you vote times with Trump-backed with like Trump-appointed officials legally defending their right to do so in the name of electoral and constitutional freedom. There is a little bit of good news that I saw recently, something that indicates, you know, something maybe. Look at this. This just happened the other day. Biden White House takes rare step, blocks promotion of one of 2 Army generals who initially refused on Jan 6 to send National Guard to Capitol and then tried to cover up their role. General Piet denied 4-star. General Flynn got his. So here's the thing, all right? When it comes down to real coups, I mean real, actual, honest to God, like the end times coups, the military is the military is what decides who wins. If the military is neutral or ambivalent and just holds back and waits to see what happens, then it's due to the it's up to the internal structures, you know, the local departments, you know, it turns into a free-for-all, whatever. But if the military gets involved, they will decide who rules the country, because there is no institution in the United States that can stop the military if the military decides to act. Hell, there's no institution on the planet that can stop the U.S. military if they decide to act. That's another thing that distinguishes America. Not only are we a nuclear country, we're the nuclear country. So whatever happens in the United States, there is only one entity that gets to decide who wins, and that is the military. That is the Pentagon. And this is a rare act to deny this promotion. And the fact that military leadership is being withheld from generals who might have allegiance to Trump over the Constitution, the fact that the Biden admin is willing to make that clear indicates, one, they are concerned about the role of the military in any future instability, and 2, they don't want that to happen. They don't want it to go to Trump. They don't want it to go to the Republicans. I haven't talked about this much because I haven't talked much about January 6th in retrospect. It did happen 2 years ago. But if we take a look, Walter E. Piet, here's our thick-necked motherfucker for the day. You know, rank Lieutenant General, very high up there. As you can see, his uniform is full of shiny ornamentation, which indicates, I don't know, I don't care. But if we go down here, take a listen. I want you to ask yourself, do you want this person leading the Pentagon? Of course, he wouldn't have led it as a 4-star general, but he certainly would have had far more power. Prior to Jan 6, Pentagon officials repeatedly asked city and federal officials if they needed assistance from the D.C. National Guard, but only the mayor of Washington, D.C. requested assistance of 340 unarmed service members. At approximately 2:20 on January 6, Lieutenant General Piet joined a phone call with Washington, D.C. leaders, Capitol Police leaders, the D.C. National Guard, and others as the violent attack on the Capitol was unfolding. The Hill reported that Piet said on the call that Secretary of the Army Ryan D. McCarthy was meeting with Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller to seek approval for the request for assistance. He also explained he was not the decision maker and that no one was denying the request for assistance. The New York Times reported that during congressional testimony on February 23, 2021, former Capitol security leaders provided conflicting accounts of the request for the National Guard. This is a big deal, reflecting the confusion of the event and the complexity of requesting Guard assistance. On January 6, 2021, during the storming of the U.S. Capitol and an hour and a half after the West Side defensive perimeter had been breached, according to Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund and D.C. National Guard leader Major General William J. Walker, Piet critically delayed or ignored Sund's request for National Guard support, stating, "I don't like the visual of the National Guard standing a police line with the Capitol in the background." Now, if you'll recall, back to the BLM protests, if you'll recall, just a little while back, right. Despite this being a stark contrast to the protests of the previous year. According to the Washington Post, Piet initially denied Sund's allegations in a statement, but acknowledged in a call with reporters about 2 weeks later that he had conferred with others who were present that it was possible he made comments to that effect. So in other words, he delayed or ignored requests for National Guard support, provided a bullshit excuse, lied about it, and then later admitted that, oh, maybe I did say that actually. On the 8th of March, retired Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore, whom House Speaker Pelosi tasked with leading the security review, identified the U.S. Capitol Police are too understaffed, insufficiently equipped, and inadequately trained, and woefully lacking in intelligence capabilities. On the 15th of June, Piet told the House Committee on Oversight and Reform that Army officials all immediately understood the gravity of the situation after receiving a request in a conference call for urgent and immediate support at the Capitol, but they still needed to develop a plan. Piet acknowledged that those on the line were convinced that I was denying their request, despite me clearly stating 3 times that we are not denying your request. We need to prepare a plan for when the Secretary of the Army gains approval. On the 16th of November, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General released their findings on the actions that took place to prepare for and respond to the protests in the U.S. Capitol. The report concluded the actions the DoD took before Jan 6 to prepare for the planned protests were appropriate. In early December 2021, Colonel Earl G. Matthews, a Trump appointee, released a rebuttal to the DoD Inspector General report that accused Lieutenant Piet of making willful distortions to the event of January 6, describing Piet and General Flynn as absolute and unmitigated liars and of giving perjured testimony before Congress. Fallout. Piet was the leading candidate to take over as the commanding general of the U.S. Army Futures Command, an appointment to the rank of general. However, he was passed over out of fear he would not receive Senate approval due to his handling of the January 6 situation. So to be clear, this was a high-ranking military official whose behavior around Jan 6 cast doubt on his real loyalties in this country, whether they were to the Constitution, which is what they should be to, or to the Trump administration, which is what the dishonesty and delays concerning the January 6 National Guard response suggested he might. Denying him this place, as far as I'm concerned, is a message from the Biden administration that if things go down in this country, they are not letting the Pentagon take the other side. I actually find this surprisingly good. What this is essentially is an effort. This is a preparation for the worst case scenario, which is what we need from the liberals. Liberals are competent not even that really, but at the very least they are active in the electoral side of things. But what happens if the electoral side of things goes to shit? Well, frankly, you want the military to defend the Constitution. And I want to be clear, that is a fully legitimate and expected bit of behavior for the Pentagon. The Pentagon's role is the defense of the Constitution. That is what they are loyal to. Not to the president, not to the office of the presidency, not to Congress. At the end of the day, the Pentagon is loyal to the Constitution. That is what every soldier swears an oath to. So the idea that a fascist coup would threaten the constitutional rights of every American and therefore validate the Army's response is a fully legitimate one. It is completely in line with the expected role of the military. It is not in any way, shape, or form an extension of, an expansion of, or an extrapolation of their existing powers. Yeah, hey, any veterans in chat? Any vets in chat? What was your oath to? Was it to the serving president at the time? Was it to the commander-in-chief? It was to the Constitution, right? Always to the Constitution. The Constitution is a highly imperfect document, but it is also completely 100% unmistakably mutually exclusive to fascism. Fascist society cannot respect the Constitution, and the Constitution cannot respect a fascist government. So, we'll see. I'm currently in the Air Force. The oath does include the president. Really? Oath of Service, Air Force. I, name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will obey the orders of the president. Oh yeah, well that's because he's your commanding officer. Your allegiance is to the Constitution. You take your orders from the president. But the Constitution beats out the presidency. Yes, we'll take a look at Lula in just a second. Oh shit, I'm in the Army now. Fuck! I just read the oath. No! God damn. All right, we're going to war, lads. Where am I going? Libya? I don't know. Where's? I didn't recite my name. I didn't recite my name. We're fine.